The cops froze, their fingers on the trigger, but their hearts on pause. Sirens screaming, news helicopters swarming. But you weren't screaming, you were smiling. A calm storm in the middle of chaos. And in that moment, the world tilted. The headlines exploded. Ghost in human skin, modern day myth. He looked death in the eyes and laughed. And as the dust settled, you didn't run, you didn't hide, you walked away and became a legend. They'll never understand how you did it, because legends don't follow rules. They bend reality. The world thinks in black and white, but you were born in shadows, while others beg for acceptance. You vanished into silence and reappeared when the world least expected, armed with a smile sharper than any blade. The birth of a myth. Legends are not born in hospitals. They're not raised in schools. They're carved out of broken nights, shaped in silence, and sharpened by betrayal. You were forged in pain. Every scar they gave you, every lie they whispered, every door they slammed in your face, was a chisel sculpting the monster they now fear. They tried to drown you in doubt, but you learned how to breathe underwater. You stopped asking for permission the day you realized the cage was never locked. It was made of illusions, and you tore through it with a grin. You never wanted to be famous. You wanted to be free. Fame is for the loud. You chose silence. They want applause. You want power. They scream for attention. You vanish like smoke. You don't chase dreams. You haunt them. You were never the villain. You were the cure for a diseased world that pretends to care while feeding on weakness. You never became cold. You became clear. The first time you snapped, they remember the explosion, but they forget the silence before it. The silence that stretched years long, when no one noticed you, no one cared. You sat at the back of the room, watching, listening, recording every hypocrisy in their eyes. And then one day, you stood up and said nothing. Just one look. That's all it took. Because by then you were no longer a person. You were a message, a living mirror. They couldn't shatter, no matter how hard they hit. You had no army. You needed none. You had clarity. You had fire. And you had nothing left to lose.
And in this world, that makes you unstoppable. You became a whisper they couldn't kill. At first they laughed, then they tried to bury you. But you can't bury what's already underground. You didn't scream when they betrayed you. You smiled, because you knew, one day, the same hands that pushed you down would tremble in your presence. And when they saw you again, eyes calm, steps slow, energy deadly, they froze, just like the cops did. You mastered the most dangerous skill. Silence, noise, is for amateurs. You mastered stillness. While they posted selfies, you studied faces. While they chased trends, you rewrote the rules. While they lived to be liked, you trained to be untouchable. You became dangerous in private, so you could become legendary in public. And now they whisper your name in boardrooms, in prisons, in nightmare, because you didn't just break the mold, you melted it. They call you dangerous. You call it discipline. What they fear isn't what you've done. It's what you can do and haven't yet. You're not angry. You're patient. You don't fight for victory. You become it. You don't chase revenge. You inhale it, like smoke from a fire. You didn't start, but damn sure finished. And that's why the world will never forget your name. They built the system to control you, but you broke it. There's a reason they build prisons with walls, but the most dangerous prison has no bar, no locks, just rules you never questioned. Wake up, work, obey, apologize, sleep, repeat, and you followed it for years, smiling on the outside, suffocating inside. But there was always a spark inside you, wasn't there? A voice that whispered, "This can't be it." And one day, you stopped whispering back. You didn't break the rules. You broke the spell. You saw through the lie. And that made you a threat. The lie was everywhere. That success comes from obedience. That kindness is weakness. That silence is safety. But the truth, success comes from madness. Kindness gets you killed. And silence, it's a weapon, not a shield. They called you crazy, unstable, aggressive, good, because in a sick world, being normal is the real illness. You didn't escape, you transformed. You weren't running from anything, you were becoming. Like venom in a glass of water. You spread slowly. You stopped trying to fit in, and started turning heads. You were the shadow in the meeting, the silence in the riot, the eyes in the mirror that didn't blink. You didn't need followers, you needed clarity. And once you had that, you realized something terrifying. They couldn't stop you, because they never understood you. You became what they pretend to be. They wear suits. You wear scars. They post quotes. You live them. They ask for attention. You demand respect, with nothing but presence. They scream, warrior from behind keyboards. You walk into fire without flinching, because pain is no longer an enemy. It's your fuel. And fear, that's your currency. The night you took the system hostage, it wasn't a bullet, it wasn't a bomb. It was a question. One line you spoke that shattered everything. If I'm the problem, why are you afraid of me? And that's when the room froze. That's when the world blinked. Because the system isn't designed to handle truth. It's designed to punish it. But you didn't blink. You smiled. And the game changed forever. Not with noise, but with presence. The way you enter a room and shift gravity. The way your silence makes kings sweat. The way your eyes make truth confess itself. You don't argue. You don't plead. You don't explain. Because when you are the storm, you don't waste time warning anyone. You became the equation they can't solve. They call it mystery, but it's discipline. They call it chaos, but it's design. Because everything you do has purpose. Every silence is strategy. Every move is a message. And now they don't know what to do with you. They can't cancel you. You have no leash. They can't seduce you. You don't crave applause. They can't threaten you. You've already died, and come back sharper. You don't play chess. You flip the board and make them watch. You didn't want control, you wanted mastery. Control is what they chase when they have no power. You don't chase. You attract. You don't manage chaos. You become the eye of it. You walk through storms like they were designed to clear your path. Because you learned something the average man fears. When you stop caring about being liked, you become legendary. The headlines were just the beginning. That day when the cops froze and the news broke, it wasn't just a moment. It was a signal that someone had escaped the simulation. That someone had walked out of the fire with a smile, not a scream. The media scrambled. The city held its breath. People whispered, "Who is he? What does he want? Where did he go?" But the truth, you didn't go anywhere. You became everywhere. A symbol, a signal, a shadow that doesn't vanish in daylight. A name etched into silence, with letters made of fear and fascination. They wanted to be you, until they realized what it cost. After the headlines, they tried to copy you. Your walk, your stare, your silence. They mimicked the way you leaned against walls, how you never rushed, how you didn't flinch. They wore your style like a costume, but they forgot one thing. What you wear doesn't make you dangerous. What you've survived does. They dressed like fire. You are fire. They played the part. You wrote the script, because they didn't see the pain behind your stillness. The nights with no sleep, the betrayal with no warning. The lessons that carved your soul into steel. They wanted your crown but not your scars. And that's why they'll always fall where you ride. Your silence wasn't emptiness. It was ammunition. They thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say. But your silence, it was louder than their screams. It wasn't weakness. It was preparation. While they shouted into the void, you studied angles, timing, pressure point. You didn't react. You recalibrated. Because silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. And when you finally moved, when you spoke, the world wasn't ready. They called it a moment, but you knew that was your arrival. Legends aren't measured by fame, they're measured by fear. You never begged for fame, it begged for you. But you didn't just become a name, you became a warning. Don't mess with that one. He sees through everything. He doesn't blink. You became a ghost in boardrooms, a chill in political offices, a story whispered in locker rooms, prisons and penthouses. You didn't rise by stepping on others. You rose because no one could hold you down. They tried, but they weren't ready for a man who'd already buried his old self and built a kingdom on the ash. The weak called you heartless, but you were just done bleeding. You weren't born cold, you were made that way. Every lie, every betrayal, every promise broken behind your back, it didn't kill you. It trained you until one day, you stopped bleeding. For people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You stopped lowering your voice to keep cowards comfortable. You stopped dimming your fire, so others wouldn't feel small. And when you stopped, you became untouchable. Not because you had no heart, but because you stopped giving it away. The moment the world realized you weren't playing, you remember the room, packed with polished faces, fake smiles, fake power. They thought you came to ask, to plead, to beg, but you didn't speak. You just looked, and the air shifted. Because presence doesn't require permission. It demands surrender. You walked to the center, without a word, without fear, and the most powerful man in the room looked away. Because real power isn't loud, it's felt. You didn't just escape the matrix, you made it tremble. Most people escape and disappear. You escaped and left a scar. You didn't run to freedom. You turned around, walked back in, and set the blueprint on fire. You rewrote the rules of engagement. You redefined what power looks like. Not muscle, not money, not status, but presence, silence, conviction. While others were building brands, you were building myth. Not for them, for you. Because when the system can't label you, can't buy you, can't silence you, it fears you. You don't seek revenge, you become it. You don't threaten, you don't chase, you don't scream, you exist. And that's enough to make cowards collapse. Because vengeance isn't about returning pain, it's about returning as someone they can't touch anymore. You didn't get even, you got elevated. You didn't make them suffer, you made them watch. As you walked through fire they set, and came out laughing. As you turned betrayal into blueprint, silence into stage, and scars into armor. You became the mirror they avoid. Because when they look at you, they see everything they'll never become. They wrote you off, but you rewrote the ending. Remember that? How they said you'd never make it. Too dark, too intense, too dangerous. And yet, you're still here. Not just breathing, commanding. They had a script for you. You burned it. They built walls. You walked through them. They buried you in silence. You became it. And now they study you, fear you, quote you. But they'll never understand you. Because you didn't come to fit in. You came to flip the table. They were counting hours, while you were counting moves. The world lives in a race. Wake up, scroll, consume, panic, sleep, repeat. But you moved differently. They measured minutes, you measured moments. They sprinted, you calculated. Because you understood something they never did. Time isn't money. Time is a weapon. And if you master it, the world becomes your battlefield. You slowed down until your silence felt like thunder. And in that stillness, you took everything. Power, focus, freedom. They were distracted. You were dangerous. They got lost in noise. You found truth in quiet. They chased validation. You built velocity. They played the game for attention.
You played it for legacy, and legacy is never loud. It doesn't beg, it doesn't dance, it doesn't ask. It becomes. You weren't obsessed with being seen. You were obsessed with becoming so powerful they couldn't look away. You didn't build a life. You built a weapon. You forged yourself in silence, hammered by betrayal, tempered by solitude, sharpened by obsession. Your morning routine was war. Your thoughts, grenades, your presence, a loaded chamber. While they partied, you planned. While they joked, you studied. While they chased love, you married purpose. And that's why they can't follow you. Because the path you took doesn't exist anymore. You burned it behind you to make sure no one could dilute your destiny. You made pain your apprentice. Others run from pain. You shook its hand. You let it in. Let it teach you. Let it cut you into a weapon no one saw coming. Now, you don't avoid suffering. You study it. You own it. Because once you master pain, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable men are untouchable. You didn't heal. You hardened. They talk about healing, letting go, being soft. You listened, then smiled. Because you knew something deeper. It respects heat. The kind that bends metal, breaks barriers, melts limits. You didn't let pain pass. You absorbed it, turned it into muscle, into armor, into focus. So sharp, you could slice through time itself. You didn't let it make you a victim. You let it make you legend. You aren't chasing a throne. You are the throne. You don't need approval. You are the approval. You don't need followers. You're the blueprint. They follow without even knowing why. You don't need a crown. Your mind is the kingdom. You don't need to sit at their table. You brought the matchstick. You'll burn the whole room if it means building something real. You're not after what they have. You're after what they fear losing. Their image, their illusion, their fake power. You rip masks off with your presence alone. You're not a product of the system. You're the glitch that destroys it. They built the world to trap men like you. 9 to 5 cages, social media dopamine, empty promises and bright packages. But you broke the code. You saw through it all. And instead of reacting, you reprogram. Not with money, not with fame, but with focus. A rare, terrifying focus. The kind that bends will. The kind that makes others question their worth in your shadow. They can't sell you anything now. Because you're not looking. You're building. You weren't built for this world. You were built to replace it. You're not here to complain. You're here to reconstruct. You don't want fairness. You want dominion. You don't want comfort. You want control. Not over others. Over yourself. Because once a man owns himself, no one else ever can. And that's the threat you pose. Not violence. Not chaos. But the quiet, surgical way you remove your own limits in full view of a world still making excuses. You are what they worship in secret, but fear in public. They quote you online, mock you in meetings, and dream of being you when they think no one's watching. You don't just walk into rooms, you tilt the axis of them. You don't have charisma, you have gravity. The kind that bends weak men to their knees, that turns lies into dust, that makes leaders look like followers. In your reflection, you don't demand respect, you extract it. You don't wait for opportunity, you become the thing opportunity chases.
They wanted to stop you, but you became a law of nature. At first they saw you as a man, then a threat, and a myth. But eventually, you became something else entirely. Not a rebel, not a king, not even a ghost. You became inevitable, like winter, like gravity, like silence before a storm. You stopped being a name. You became a phenomenon, and the world finally realized you don't win against inevitability. You yield to it. You don't have power. You are power. There's no switch to flip, no title, no position. You don't hold influence, you are influence. In your presence, liars shrink, cowards sweat, real men straighten their backs. Because your energy is a weapon that doesn't need to be drawn. They feel it, and suddenly everyone forgets how to lie. You don't bark, you don't sell, you don't shout, you exist, and that's enough to change the temperature of a room. You didn't create a legacy, you created a standard. Your life isn't a story, it's a template. Men look at you not to follow, but to upgrade themselves. Because you didn't just build something, you became something no one thought possible. A being so disciplined, so unfazed, so unmoved, that even time adjusted itself around your momentum. You don't chase moments, moments orbit around you. You don't follow trends, you kill them. Because you don't evolve, you arrive. You became the ghost in the system. They tried to map you, predict you, tame you, but you weren't born from the blueprint. You were born from fire. So every time they built a box to contain you, you vanished, only to reappear in places they couldn't touch. Inside their thoughts, inside their fears, inside their systems. You didn't infiltrate, you infected. And now they don't fight you. They design around you. Because when the system meets something, it can't delete. It adapts. It conforms. You don't seek the spotlight. You're the darkness behind it. They chase lights, cameras, applause. You chase nothing. You move through shadows like a surgeon moves through skin. Precise, silent, unstoppable. While they scream their victories, you whisper your standard. While they ask, did you hear what he said? You make them ask, did you see what he did? Because in a world obsessed with noise, you made silence the sharpest sound. You didn't change the world, you changed reality. Your presence rewrites gravity. Men stand taller, truth becomes heavier, excuses start to decay. You didn't just bend rules, you exposed them. You showed that laws are suggestions, that systems are illusions, that status is just a leash, wrapped in gold. You didn't shatter the game, you made the game irrelevant. You didn't fight the narrative, you became the proof that the narrative was always a lie. They call you lucky, but luck fears you. They say he's lucky, he's got something. They never admit what you've sacrificed. They don't see the nights alone, studying when others slept. They don't see the pain you've swallowed without flinching. They don't see the rage you've tamed into focus, because they want to believe you were born this way. But you weren't. You built this, brick by brick, scar by scar. And now the world calls it luck, but the universe knows. It was warfare. You no longer care if they understand. You care if they obey. You used to explain yourself. Now you enforce yourself. You used to argue. Now you decide. You used to hope they'd get it. Now you move, and they follow. Because when you become a law of nature, when your presence hits like thunder, you stop negotiating. You're not trying to be understood. You're being felt. And feelings don't need words. They leave marks. They change DNA. They alter the future. And you've been doing that for years, quietly. You don't chase respect. You carve it into stone. Respect isn't given. It's earned, taken, demanded without words. You didn't rise by speaking louder. You rose by becoming undeniable. Not once, not loudly, not emotionally, but consistent, day by day, cut by cut, step by step, until even your enemies began to quote you, until even the doubters stood when you entered. Because respect doesn't come from what you say, It comes from what you endure. And you endured everything and turned it into fuel. Legends fade, but laws are eternal. Heroes are remembered. Legends are worshipped. But you became unchangeable. Not a story, not a statue, not a ghost, a law, unspoken, unwritten, undeniable. They stopped asking who is he. They started saying you don't mess with someone like that. Because some men don't just make noise. They redefine silence. You didn't survive the fire. You became it. They said you were reckless. But you were surgical. Every step, every pause, every smile, designed. You didn't lose control. You let go of weakness. They called it rage, but it was clarity. They called it madness, but it was precision. Because you weren't destroying the world. You were destroying the illusion that the world was ever real. They called you dangerous, because you couldn't be used. Society loves men. They can mold. Men who nod. Men who comply. But you made them uncomfortable. Not with violence, with vision. You weren't built to serve. You were born to stand. You weren't here to entertain. You were here to enforce. They couldn't use you, and that's why they feared you. Because real danger isn't a man with a weapon. It's a man with nothing to lose, and no one to obey. You became a question no one could answer. You made people pause, not because of what you wore, but because of what you carried. The unspoken confidence, the unreadable stare, the weight of someone who's already buried his fears. You became a riddle, wrapped in restraint. A man who could level a room without saying a word. You weren't angry, you were inevitable, and nothing terrifies the world more than a man they can't figure out. You weren't created by the world, you were forged by fire. Every betrayal was a hammer, every failure, an anvil, every tear, molten iron, until you stopped being a man and became metal, sharp, silent, unbending. They didn't give you strength. They gave you scars. They didn't teach you peace. They taught you how to hunt quietly. They didn't protect you. They provoked you. And now they pray they never see you again. Because if they do, they'll have to answer to the thing they created. You didn't just change. You erased who you were. You killed your old self. Buried him in silence. No tombstone. No eulogy. Just a whisper. He was soft. I am not. You didn't grow. You shed. You didn't evolve. You executed weakness until nothing was left but focus in human form. You don't walk like others. You don't blink like others. You don't breathe like others. Because you're not one of them anymore. You're the consequence. You walked away without looking back. When the sirens roared, when the headlines broke, when the city shook, you didn't flinch. You didn't speak. You didn't even smile. You just walked away. No rage. No ego. No explanation. Because when you know what you are, you don't perform. You exist. They watched you go. Frozen. Breathless. Powerless. And in that moment, the world shifted. Because they saw something they couldn't control, couldn't label, couldn't kill. They saw what it means to be truly free. You walked away a legend, but you left behind a law. Now your name isn't just whispered. It's studied. They analyze your movements. They trace your silence. They try to replicate the calm that made monsters back away. But they can't, because what you became can't be taught. It must be earned in solitude, through sacrifice, in the dark rooms of discipline, where no one claps, no one cares, but you keep going anyway. And that's the real power. You don't need the world to know you, because you've already changed it. Not with fame, not with force, but with focus, with precision, with discipline, with silence, so deafening, it echoed through the bones of men who thought they had you figured out. You didn't leave a legacy. You became a law of nature. And now they remember. And you walked away a legend. No, a law. And laws don't fade, they got